woke up every day and I was like, I am miserable. And then like it had gone on for like months where I was like, I probably should go see like doctor or therapist. Like,
Dennis, what do you want to tell our viewers?
Yeah, go like, comment, and subscribe.
Welcome back to Between the Fields podcast. We are your hosts, Ramin. This is Dennis,
Yo, what's up?
where we bring you tips, advice, and inspiration from collegiate athletes who bring their sports experience and training into their professional world.
Today, we are here with 5'4" FAU women's soccer player. She's currently the charge nurse of the CV ICU unit over in DC, Danny Darby.
yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, guys.
Welcome,
Welcome.
Danny.
Give us a quick description about like what you do as a CV ICU nurse.
Yeah, so I work in Washington, D.C. I work on the surgical side of the ICU, so all of the heart surgery, heart transplant, ECMO, and all the heart devices. I take care of those patients.
Very cool.
So, Danny, we're gonna try and get you, out of your professional career and kind of warm up that athlete mind of yours. So we're gonna ask you, first question: How did your experience as a collegiate athlete shape your work ethic and discipline?
So I think it honestly not only shaped it, but it kind of defined it. I think as a student athlete, you have to be very disciplined, especially as a Division I athlete, to make sure that you're starting on the field, staying healthy, being in the best performance ability that you can have. Um, and so doing that for 4 years straight, just kind of parts of those habits just stick with you into the professional field. And so some of those things have just transitioned and has brought me to the career that I'm at right now.
Awesome, awesome. And then, how important was it for you to be a starter? You said, your work ethic and discipline, and you wanted to start. Was that something like, if you weren't starting, was your mood completely thrown off?
Um, so it's kind of a funny story. So I grew up in Virginia and my parents were so mad at me my freshman year because I was like, there's no way I'm starting. I'm a freshman. I just got here. I didn't even know if I passed the fitness test. I was like, there's no way I'm starting. And they're like, okay, like we're not gonna fly down. And then freshman gets there, we're in the locker room, they go through the starting lineup. I'm starting on the way. And so I texted my parents like in the locker room and I'm like, so great news, I'm starting tonight. And they immediately called me after the game. They're like, I knew it. Why didn't you tell us this? You've been training all summer. You went back to school. You started school early. And so, yeah, so I worked very hard. I didn't go in expecting to start, but once I did get that start in the first game in freshman year, and I think I was played about like 1,000 minutes my freshman year, like it was, I guess it became more attainable and realistic of a goal that it just was a goal for me the rest of my career.
Yeah,
Gotcha, gotcha.
something huge to have being a freshman starter. It's a good feeling. Definitely a confidence boost for the rest of the season. So, Danny, going into, I guess, the rest of your years over at FAU, what would you say would be one of the biggest lessons you took away from being a student athlete that you now apply into being a CVICU nurse or a charge nurse in general?
Um, so I think one of the takeaways from college athletics that has really helped me is performing under pressure. I think as a student athlete, a lot of that pressure comes from within, just wanting to start, to play well, be consistent, all of that. Um, and so doing that day in and day out as a college athlete, um, and then transitioning into an ICU where you're taking care of some of the sickest patients. Um, there's some days where I don't even sit down at work and I'm just going all day. Um, And so just having that kind of experience in college, knowing like I want I wanted to be a good student athlete. And then I became a nurse. And I'm like, okay, I want to be a good nurse. And just kind of that day to day lifestyle transition to the workplace where I'm like, okay, I want to be a good nurse. I want to do all the right things. I want to take care of this patient, make sure that they're okay. So that's kind of, I would say, the biggest thing is like, I feel like I can do those things and it wasn't as big of a learning curve or didn't feel any different. Like I was going to still be able to perform in a high stress unit and environment.
Definitely. And now that you're kind of warmed up, Danny, we kind of just want to, talk about your transition from college sports into your professional career. So I want to ask just like kind of what was the hardest part of transitioning from athletics into becoming an ICU nurse?
So I think the hardest part was learning that when you go, sorry. So to start, I guess when you're a student athlete and you're on a team, you guys all have the same goal. Like you want to win, you want to extend your season, you want to make it to playoffs, you want to make it to the tournament, and hopefully like the NCAA tournament. That's everyone has the same goal. I think the hardest thing for me to learn in the professional working environment is, everyone has goals and they want to progress their career, but a lot of it is more personalized and also learning that, your job isn't who you are and that a lot of the goals can be external out of the workplace. And so kind of shifting that understanding was a little bit difficult for me because I was like, didn't want to lose myself as a nurse and being like, oh, this is everything and working really hard. And then realizing people don't care as much. Not that they don't care, but like they just have other things and other goals outside of work. And I think shifting and learning about like your identity after being a student athlete was one of the harder things that I struggled with. But you manage.
Yep.
All right, Danny. So coming into the CV ICU nurse environment, it's kind of, especially being the charge nurse, it's kind of like a team environment. How did you make that transition from leaving your soccer team into this new team dynamic?
So I think leaving the soccer team, I was there for 5 years. And so just based on like seniority, I feel like I gained a lot of leadership um status just by being there. And that kind of helped develop like my leadership style, um, which is just to lead by example. I'm not someone who's very vocal or going to really motivate anyone. And I'm not entirely confrontational where I don't always feel comfortable with just flat out directing someone to do something. And so leaving that college athletic team environment and then sometimes like coming in the ICU and eventually taking on the charge role. Um, I still carried that leadership style where I wanted to lead by example, where my coworkers, like, I'm still going to do the little things and be a good nurse, no matter what, if I'm charge nurse or I'm not the charge nurse that day. And so I think that was very helpful in the transition into how you lead in the corporate setting. You're kind of like a charge nurse, but you're also like a resource to help people. And so, leading by example, then someone asks you a question like, oh, how can I do this? And like, well, I normally do it this way, and I want you to learn though. Like, I want you to find your own style too. And so you show them an example, and then you help guide them and guide their practice. And so that's
Danny,
kind of what transitioned. Yeah.
question for you. Do you feel like you get the same response leading by example on the soccer field as you do leading by example in your nursing as a charge nurse? Do you feel like it's the same response or just as good of a response, or do you feel like you do have to be more vocal?
I think because I didn't really gain a lot of leadership um as when I was on the team, like I feel like I'd never really stepped into a leadership role. I just kind of fell into it through seniority. And so I think now and as like a charge nurse, I'm definitely more vocal where like, like identifying problems, figuring out how to problem solve, navigating the conversations with like triage attendings and the ICU attendings and your coworkers. And so that was definitely a big growing part because I definitely was not confrontational. I didn't really want to direct anyone. Um, and so it was helpful having that kind of role in college, um, to kind of guide some of like the newer players and, making being like, hey, like enjoy this. It goes by so fast. But it was definitely a very different setting than where I am now, where you really do have to kind of be very forward at times. And it definitely forced me to grow in my professional career.
And you mentioned as being a chargist on the floor, I'm sure it definitely comes with a conflict every now and then. Would you say, and if not, it's totally fine, but would you say, like, did you have any experience in when you were at FAU as a student athlete, maybe any conflicts that you kind of took the wisdom from or knowledge and how to dance around conflict and bring it into the CV ICU floor, or did you kind of have to come up and figure out your way with dealing with conflict in the unit?
Um, So definitely had to learn how to deal with conflict. It kind of goes back to the same what I was talking about earlier about how like your team and the program has like the same exact goal. Like you all want the same exact thing. Um, and so despite having like little conflicts in the locker room, on the field, like they're very short lived. Um, because you can see the bigger picture and you guys all want the same thing. I would say at work, in the ICU, it's not always like that, where people really do have very different opinions about what's going on. They think things should be approached very differently. And so I did have to learn a lot of emotional intelligence and being able to, really fall into the interdisciplinary team and like figuring out what my role is and how to navigate conversations with people in order to kind of help mitigate a situation or a conflict. I think, post pandemic and a lot of the environment that's going on, people will be so quick to blame nurses. And I don't want to dive too deep into that because it's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But I think people forget that nurses are there to help you. Like, we don't go into work being like, I want to go piss off someone or make them feel unimportant. Everyone goes to work trying to help their patients. And so when you're having conflicts with family or patients, it was a huge learning curve to figure out how you can like meet in the middle, develop that relationship and move forward and advance someone's care and basically get them back home and healthy.
Also, Danny, another question that we had for you. Just you mentioned emotional intelligence, so kind of just want to ask, like, did you have any like mental challenges that you faced, like as a student athlete, that you face as a nurse today? I mean, obviously there's a conflict, in how to handle that, but do you think that being a student athlete prepared you for, you know, just dealing with your mental challenges or mental health in general, now as a nurse?
Yeah, so I am a big advocate for mental health. Um, so during my career, my playing career, I suffered multiple injuries. I think my junior year broke my foot twice. I ended up breaking my nose, had to wear one of those like plastic masks.
Like,
If I wanted to play, like they would not let me on the field if I didn't wear it. Um, and so, and then I came back from all those injuries, went to go for my senior season, and then ended up breaking my leg like 7 minutes into the season opener. And so it was a series of like devastating injuries that really kept me from playing. And so I struggled significantly mentally, just with like a loss of identity. Like you grew up playing soccer, you get to that level, it's part of who you are at that point. And as you're navigating like becoming a young adult and becoming on your own, like I was very lost. Like I was stressed out every day. I was
Did you
crying every other day.
Not to interrupt you, but did you ever tell somebody that and then they're like, Hey, don't worry, or they just kind of brushed it off. Like, did you ever feel like you told somebody like, hey, I feel like don't know who I am without soccer, and somebody just kind of brushes you off or anything? Was that like a relatable thing like that you experienced?
I think if I think we've come a long way, at least like in America, like being able to talk about mental health and just kind of mental health awareness. I don't want to like place the blame on anyone being like, you probably should have stepped in, but like the fact that I was like, I remember one day, like we were in training and like I was wanted to play so bad, but like Craig, I love Craig, my athletic trainer, but like they weren't letting me play and like I just was bawling my eyes out and there was no need for me to be like just losing it one day. And so there were definitely signs where like I wasn't regulating my emotions appropriately through all of this. And like I think I couldn't explain to people what was going on. Like I was like just at a loss. And so I think people like have been more open, and that's one of my goals of being such an like being willing to talk about it. Is like I could not explain to people why I was just so stressed out and crying and having anxiety all the time. And looking back now, Richard, it's easy to say. It's like I had a huge loss of identity. I didn't know who I was. But I think Patrick and I talk about it all the time, and it's like I definitely should have talked to someone sooner.
Yeah,
Like
and that
I
kind
went
of
probably.
brings up what kind of question I had. Did anyone extend like an outlook or like a resource for you to kind of like talk to somebody, or did you have anything to kind of help you cope with it at all?
So Patrick, my now husband, was definitely a very big factor in kind of coping with it. I think I basically got to the point where I was just like, I woke up every day and I was like, I am miserable. And then like it had gone on for like months where I was like, I probably should go see like doctor, a therapist. Like I couldn't find joy in like everyday life.
Right,
And
right.
I won't dive into like a diagnosis, but like it Patrick was probably the one where we got to the point and he's like, I can't help you. Like, you need to go see someone. And it was like at the point where I was like, yeah, I can't even help myself. So let's just make an appointment. And so I think now it's a lot less taboo to talk to people about it. It's a lot less taboo to be like, oh, I'm going to therapy. Like it's healthy. That's part of your health. Is if you're not well physically, like you can be well physically and you can be very unwell mentally. And I think people need to realize like those are tied together. Your mental wellness is an important part of your health. And so, you know,
Yeah, that's
hopefully
awesome.
with awareness, people are more open to reach out to people.
Yeah,
Giving you like avenues, yeah, on like, what avenues to take, what thought processes to, cognitive behavioral therapy. So yeah, that's awesome. Um, so I guess let's talk about a little bit more, transitioning out of this over into the playbook for success here, just kind of, how you stay successful as a nurse. So I just want to kind of know, for example, like your work-life balance, like kind of like an off-season training plan. Uh, what strategies do you use to maintain high performance at work while avoiding burnout?
So I am a big advocate. So going back to like identity, you know, like your sport is like your identity when you're growing up and then you become a college athlete. Um, I definitely at first like, oh, I'm a CV ICU nurse, like, and I didn't want to be like that. Like, there's a little bit of stigmatism to being a CV ICU nurse, like, but I don't know who told me this advice, but basically making sure that like you're not your job, like that's not who you are. It's just a job at the end of the day. And so some of the things that I do to make sure that like, when I work 4 nights, 5 nights in a row, and I'm like, I haven't slept in days and I'm super tired, like the next couple of days that I'm off, I'm doing things that I want to do. Like it doesn't have to do with work whatsoever. I'm going for a run, I'm working out. We live in DC, just go for a walk, see the monuments. Like there's so many things you can do, and you just taking the time to figure out what you like to do is a huge, huge factor in healthcare, especially because of how heavy it can be at times. and making sure that you're doing things to take a step back from that setting.
Awesome,
And not to
awesome.
bring it back to mental health, that's a good way to decompress.
Kind of doing what caused you mental health. You know, not mental health. Yeah, I don't want to say that, but it's kind of like, yeah, you do what you were super passionate about, what you love. So yeah, you're right. To help
Yeah,
relieve your
I mean,
stress. Yeah, there you go.
So to follow up on Ramin's question here, Danny, what was you would say one of the hardest lessons you learned, and how did it change you?
oh, that's a good question. I would say, so we talked about it earlier. Starting was a really important thing for me, but I did not start a single game in my senior year or my 5th year. Sorry, I didn't play in my senior year. And so that was a huge thing for me. But after coming back from everything that I went through, I was just so happy to be on the field again. Like, I did not care. I was like, I want to win games, but I was like, and I wanted to contribute, and I still got pretty good minutes. But like, it definitely was like, you know, going from starting your freshman game to not starting at all your 5th year was definitely a little disheartening. But, you know, taking a step back and having perspective of like, wow, I'm just lucky to be playing again. Like, I broke my leg in half and I'm on the field. I think that was one of the harder things to swallow is like I wanted something so bad, but I was like, I'm physically not capable of attaining it. Like I was like, I cannot train any more than I am right now. My goal is to stay on the field. And so moving into like my professional career and adult life, it just kind of helps you realize that, the bigger picture of like identifying the goals that you want in life and understanding that things will come in time and that you don't always need to be so gung ho about doing the next thing and like being in the moment is actually very important. And I think that was one of the harder lessons to learn in the moment that it was happening to me. But it was a very valuable lesson about being present and just enjoying life and doing the things that I like to do.
Yeah.
And Danny, I'm gonna ask you one of the last questions here. What is a piece of advice that you would give to your former self as you've gone through this journey and into your professional career? Is there anything you would tell yourself now, looking back
Definitely
on it?
to my college self, I would tell myself to enjoy it. Like, I definitely was struggling a lot mentally through like my later 2 years, but it goes by so fast. And like, even though there's like good and bad in it, like just realizing that's part of life and just being in the moment is so important. And like, I just feel like it went by so quick, and I was a lot of times I didn't find myself just like enjoying being at the beach with my friends and or just the pregame dances in the locker room. Like there's no other experience like that. And so at least for my college self, I definitely would tell myself to like be in the moment, let loose, have fun. Like you're never gonna be in this situation again. And it goes by so fast and you make some of the best memories. But yeah,
Would you
that's
tell
probably
your
the advice.
would you tell your current self that?
I
Or,
think
or
yes,
future.
but I think I'm living a life like that. So I think living in DC, Patrick and I have made a very strong effort to, get out there, make friends when we moved up here. We're like, all right, we're going to sign up for these soccer leagues because that's what we want to do. We want to be in the moment. We were very unsure about winter. We still try to go out and do things in the winter and just, enjoying our time in the city has been a really big, um, you know, factor in our lives, just trying to be like, we're here. We love Florida and we miss Florida, but we're up here. We're going to make the most of it, make the most experiences and memories that we can.
All right, and I got one here. Were there any resources that you wish you had used that you believe would have helped you get to where you're at, or
Oh, yeah. So I think for someone, not if they're a student athlete, but someone who's just interested in healthcare, I would just, like, they could be in high school, college, like, just go to your hospital and, like, volunteer, shadow. I think looking back at like my progression of my career, like I wish I had kind of decided what I wanted to do a little bit earlier. Um, like I took I think I graduated and then I worked as like a tech for a little bit, worked in an urgent care, and had I taken the time to like shadow someone in the hospital as like a nurse or a PA or like what do you call it? An AA, an anesthesia assistant. Like there's so many careers in the healthcare world that people don't know about that I think you can learn about and then you can kind of tailor your path to that direction. So that would be like the big advice I would add, like to someone who wants to go in
It's
healthcare.
very glad it's a smart thing to do to at least see what you would like to do potentially.
And
Um,
like reach out. Like if someone messaged me on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, I live in DC, like can I shadow you or something?" Like that networking too is like a huge thing to help get your foot in the door. I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, come shadow me for a day."
Awesome.
last question. You may or may not have an answer or not. Is there anything that you wish we would have asked you, or that you want people to know about, or anything about just transitioning from collegiate sports into professional world that we missed? And it's okay if there's not an answer. I was just kind of curious.
Um, oh, well, speaking of injuries, the best advice I got from my club coach, go to a school that you will be happy at if you were injured at. Because I would have lost
Okay.
my mind if I was up north with a broken bone and crutches and all of that.
There you
So
go.
you definitely got to find a school that you're happy at if you are not on the field.
You could have a broken bone at the beach.
There you go.
Yeah,
Dennis, why
that
don't
was my goal. Not
All
my goal
right.
to have a broken leg, but I wanted to be at a school that I was going to be happy at,
Yeah,
whether I
that's
was on or off the field.
very true. Well, thank you, Danny, for coming out.
thank
This
you.
was Between the Fields podcast.
Yeah,
And
no
you
problem.
can catch us every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Spotify, also YouTube. Catch our shorts. Also, we got a TikTok account now. So thank you so much, Danny, and we'll see you guys next time.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.